It began, as most horrors do, with something small, something easy to ignore. Peter Hale noticed it the second Thursday of October, around 2:03 a.m., when he rose from his desk, spine aching from 5 straight hours of writing, and wandered into the bathroom for what was supposed to be a brief piss break. Outside, the wind bullied the pine trees of Dyer's Ridge, turning them into a chorus of whispered threats. The old farmhouse groaned with every gust. It was the sort of night where time stretched like chewed gum, where the hours between midnight and dawn didn't feel real. Peter didn't turn on the overhead light. He liked the dim glow of the old Edison bulb in the hallway lamp. It cast the bathroom in a dull amber haze, just enough to find the toilet without burning his retinas. He washed his hands, looked up, and his reflection blinked half a second too late. Wasn't a dramatic thing, not really. The kind of thing your mind explains away before you've even processed it. Peter stood there, hands dripping over the porcelain basin, staring into his own bloodshot eyes in the mirror. He looked tired, hollow-cheeked, like a man who hadn't seen daylight in days, which wasn't far from the truth. He chalked the blink up to exhaustion. Hell, maybe even the light flickered. Maybe it was just a trick of the glass. Still, he didn't move right away. He stood in the half-dark, heartbeat rising slowly, mind replaying the blink in slow motion. It was late. Mirrors do weird shit at night. You're a horror writer, Pete. You know your brain's just messing with you. He reached for the switch and turned on the overhead. Everything looked normal. His reflection blinked when he blinked, moved when he moved. No delay. Peter exhaled a laugh. Jesus, he muttered. You're losing it, Hale. He turned off the light, left the bathroom, and tried to forget the incident. But he didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he walked past the mirror without looking into it, just in case. He made coffee, black and scalding, the way he liked it when a deadline loomed like a shadow at his back. His editor, Clay Wyman, had been pestering him for weeks. Pete, the manuscript's due before Halloween. You promised. Don't make me fly up there. Clay's tone was part worry, part threat. Peter understood. Clay had been his editor for 5 novels. He knew the cycle. 3 months of silence, 1 month of obsession, then a finished novel that usually ended up on a bestsellers list. But this time, things were different. This time, the story wasn't coming. He stared at the blinking cursor on his laptop, mocking him from a blank page titled The Watcher. Nothing came, except the memory of that flicker. He hadn't told anyone, not his brother Mark, not his friend Ellie from the bookstore down in Newcastle, not even Clay, because it sounded stupid, like something you tell your shrink right before they increase your meds. That night, Peter brushed his teeth with deliberate slowness, daring the mirror to misbehave again. It didn't. At least not that night. Peter Hale had always trusted solitude more than people. He bought the old farmhouse on Dyer's Ridge because it was the last house on a dead-end road, surrounded by forest so thick even cell service gave up trying to reach it. He liked the silence. The only thing louder than the wind out here was the tap of his fingers on the keyboard. But silence, Peter was beginning to learn, has a way of listening back. That night, after the flicker, the house seemed a bit too still. Even the creaks and groans of the floorboards, sounds he used to find comforting, felt timed, calculated, like something was waiting for him to notice. He took his toothbrush out of the medicine cabinet slowly, watching the mirror the entire time. The glass was old, warped in the corners, smudged from years of not caring. Behind him, the bathroom door was cracked open, the hallway light casting a long shadow. As he brushed, foam collecting at the corners of his mouth, he watched himself closely. Every blink, every tiny movement. Then it happened. Not a delay. Not this time. Something worse. In the mirror, Peter raised his left hand to scratch his cheek. But in real life, his right hand stayed still by his side. He froze. The reflection smiled. It wasn't a full grin, just a small twitch of the lips. But Peter's mouth didn't move. Not at all. He dropped the toothbrush. It clattered in the sink, spitting toothpaste everywhere. The reflection stared at him, unblinking now, head tilted slightly to the right. Then, in a blink, and this time it was faster than Peter could follow, it snapped back into sync. His own face stared back at him, mimicking perfectly, as if nothing had happened. Peter backed away, hit the door frame with a dull thunk. He didn't sleep that night either. By morning, he convinced himself it had been a waking dream, a moment of exhausted hallucination. Lack of sleep and too much caffeine could do worse things to a man's mind. He made toast and eggs, poured black coffee, and stared at the bathroom door from the kitchen table. He hadn't shut the light off in there. He hadn't gone back in to do it either. The light stayed on. Every now and then, a breeze moved through the hallway, just wrong enough to swing the bathroom door wider, like something was inviting him in. Around noon, Ellie called. "Jesus, Pete, are you alive?" she said without a hello. "Clay's been calling the bookstore, trying to track you down." "I'm fine," Peter said, though he didn't mean it. "You sound like you've been gargling gravel." "Just tired." "Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. Listen, you want me to bring up lunch tomorrow? That diner in town finally got their meatloaf back. I know you crave it when you're being dramatic." Peter chuckled, and for a moment it helped. Ellie had that effect. She was smart and sarcastic and didn't take any of his crap. She was also one of the few people who had stuck around after Peter got famous. She'd known him back when he still wrote short stories for penny magazines, and taught night classes in Portland. "Lunch sounds good," he said. "No mirrors, though." There was a pause. "What?" "Nothing. Just a joke." He hung up, feeling slightly better. That night, he avoided the bathroom. He pissed in the backyard, like a drunk teenager, closed the bathroom door, tossed a towel over the mirror, just in case, and he slept. But at 3:07 a.m., he woke up to the sound of running water from the bathroom. At first, Peter thought it was rain, but rain didn't sound like that. Rain didn't gurgle, didn't splash against porcelain. The sound was too close, too specific. The faucet. He sat upright in bed, heart pounding in the quiet after the dreamless sleep. He had pulled a heavy flannel blanket over himself before bed, but now he was sweating beneath it. The kind of sweat that comes from fear, not heat. The house was dark. He hadn't left a light on, yet there was a soft, sickly glow down the hallway. The bathroom door was open, wide. He was sure he had shut it. The faucet ran steadily, not at full blast, but enough to form a rhythmic drip in the basin, like fingers tapping glass. Drip, drip. Peter reached over to the nightstand and grabbed the baseball bat he kept by closer. The sound sharpened. The soft pshh of water. The quiet tick-tick of dripping. The mirror light flickering again, as if unsure if it wanted to stay on or off. Peter stopped at the door. He didn't want to look. Didn't want to see that goddamn reflection. But he had to. He raised the bat slowly and peeked around the corner. Empty. Just a sink running. The towel he'd thrown over the mirror was on the floor, soggy. The glass above the sink was fogged. Like someone had taken a long, hot shower. Only the room was cold. Freezing, even. His breath came in small clouds. He reached forward, hesitant, and turned the faucet off. Silence. Peter stared at himself in the mirror. One long look. No delay. No smiles. Just his pale face staring back. Bloodshot eyes. A man who hadn't slept well in weeks. "Okay," he whispered. "You win." He backed out, shut the bathroom door, and this time, he jammed a wooden chair under the knob. He walked back to the bedroom, pulled the blanket over himself like a child hiding from monsters, and tried not to imagine that smile. The next day, Ellie showed up at noon sharp, wearing a brown leather jacket, tight jeans, and that look that said she wasn't buying any of Peter's usual nonsense. She had a paper bag in one hand and a can of Coke in the other. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting. "Also, your bathroom light was on." Peter stiffened. "What?" "I turned it off. Hope that's not breaking some house rule or something." He forced a smile. "No, that's fine. I just haven't been sleeping well." "Obviously," she said, walking into the kitchen like she owned the place. She dropped the bag on the counter. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and something that claims to be gravy. "You're welcome." They ate in silence for a while, the kind of silence that old friends share. Ellie watched him more than she ate. Finally, she said, "Pete, what's going on?" And for a moment, he almost told her. Almost, but the words caught in his throat. "I think my reflection smiled at me without me smiling. I think it's moving when I'm not. I think it's getting stronger." Instead, he said, "Just writer's block. You know how it gets." She didn't look convinced. "Maybe you should take a break." "I can't." Ellie leaned back in her chair. "You sure you're not seeing things?" Peter forced a chuckle. "What? Like ghosts?" "No, I mean, exhaustion can do things. I had an uncle who went a week without sleep and thought the refrigerator was whispering to him. He smiled politely, but inside, something twisted. Because he was starting to believe the mirror wasn't just reflecting him anymore. It was watching him. And he didn't know what would happen if he kept watching. That night, Peter did something he hadn't done in a decade. He covered every mirror in the house. The bathroom, of course. The hallway's antique mirror, gifted by some distant aunt he never really liked, was shrouded in an old flannel shirt and duct-taped around the edges. Even the little mirror on his bedroom dresser got a towel and 2 books leaned against it. It was silly. It was paranoid. It was the kind of thing his characters did in their last desperate act before being swallowed by something from the other side. But Peter was past caring about what was rational. He couldn't shake the image from 2 nights ago, the way the reflection had smiled first. Not after, not with, but first. He drank half a bottle of bourbon, hoping it would quiet the noise in his head. But when he finally fell asleep, his dreams did not cooperate. He stood in the bathroom again, except it wasn't his bathroom. Not exactly. It was wider, older, with yellowed tile floors and cracked white walls. The air smelled of mold and copper. A sickly fluorescent light flickered above the mirror, which was tall and warped and stained at the edges with something black and pulsing. He stepped closer. His reflection wasn't there. The mirror showed the room, yes, the sink, the door behind him, the stained tiles. But Peter himself was absent. Then something entered the frame. From the inside, a shadow. No, a man. He was tall, his skin waxy and pale, like candle flesh. His face was Peter's face, but bloated, dead-eyed, wrong. The mirror version of Peter grinned, too wide, and reached toward the glass, pressing long fingers against the other side, and the glass began to bend. Peter wanted to run, scream, wake up, but he couldn't move. The man in the mirror whispered, voice muffled like a scream underwater, "Let me out." Peter jolted awake with a gasp, soaked in sweat, the echo of the whisper still rattling in his ears. "Let me out." He scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping on the blanket tangled around his legs, and ran to the bathroom. He didn't even stop to think. He kicked the door open, and the mirror was bare, uncovered. The towel that had been taped there was on the floor, torn down. The duct tape peeled back in long, curling strips like dead skin. Peter stared at the reflection. His face was there, his eyes, but the mouth wasn't quite right. It curved upward, just slightly, before flattening again into perfect sync. Peter took a shaky breath, turned, and left the bathroom. But just before he closed the door, he swore he saw the reflection blink twice. The next morning, Peter found blood in the sink. Tiny drops, no more than a few specks, dotting the white porcelain like crimson freckles. For a moment, he stood there, half asleep, wondering if he had cut himself shaving. Only he hadn't shaved in days. His cheeks were rough with stubble, his neck shadowed. He lifted both hands. No cuts, no paper-thin scrapes on his fingers. He checked his arms. Nothing. But the blood was fresh, still wet. He turned on the faucet to wash it away and froze. Because just for a second, just for a goddamned second, the reflection of his hand turned the wrong tap. He was reaching with his right hand, but in the mirror, the left faucet twisted open. Then it caught up, snapped back into perfect harmony. Peter stood there, heart thudding in his chest, listening to the water rush from the sink, watching the reflection move perfectly now. But he had seen it. He knew. Whatever lived in the mirror was learning, syncing itself, improving, mimicking, replacing. He stopped using mirrors after that, brushed his teeth in the kitchen with the faucet turned away from any reflective surface, shaved in the dark with a dull razor, cutting himself twice. He taped over his laptop screen. Even his phone stayed off, tucked in a drawer. No FaceTime, no selfies, no reflections. Every time he caught even a glimpse, the side of a car, the screen of the microwave, a puddle in the driveway, he flinched, because sometimes the reflection didn't quite get it right. Sometimes it moved just a little too soon. Peter called his brother Mark that Friday. It had been months since they talked, maybe a year. They had grown apart after their mother's funeral. Something about shared trauma drives siblings into silence, like insects scurrying from light. Mark picked up on the second ring. "You're alive," he said flatly. "Barely." "What's wrong?" Something weird's going on, man." Peter wasn't sure how to say it. Not directly. Not yet. "You remember Mom's mirror?" The line went quiet. "You mean that one?" Mark said finally. "The old bathroom one? The one Dad smashed with the hammer?" "Yeah." "I haven't thought about that in years." Peter hesitated. Then, "Did it ever seem off to you?" Mark gave a hollow laugh. "Like how it used to show us standing behind ourselves? That kind of off?" Peter's skin went cold. "You remember that?" Of course I do. I still have nightmares about it. Peter sank into the chair at his writing desk, the phone pressed hard to his ear. What if it's not gone? Another long pause. Pete, why are you asking me this? Peter stared at the covered hallway mirror, the towel over it now turning gray from dust. Because I think something's coming back, and this time it doesn't want to stay behind the glass. That night, Peter heard the mirror whisper to him, not words, not yet, but sound. Breathing, maybe. Wet and slow. Sometimes a chuckle, low and guttural. Sometimes the rhythmic tap, tap, tap of a fingernail on glass. He didn't sleep, just sat at his desk in the dark, the manuscript page still blank, watching the hallway and listening to the voice of the thing that looked like him, but wasn't. By the second week of October, Peter Hale had forgotten what silence really sounded like. Because now, even in the dead hours of night, when the trees stood still and not even the wind dared breathe, the house hummed. Not with electricity, not with old pipes, with something else. With presence. The mirror didn't just reflect anymore, it watched. And Peter, day by day, could feel something watching him through it. He started catching flashes, glimpses of movement when he wasn't looking. A blink from the wrong angle, a mouth twitch that didn't match the rest of the face. He saw the reflection. He took down the old wooden mirror frame from the hallway and smashed the glass with a hammer. It felt good, right, final. The sound of splintering glass echoed through the house like a gunshot. But when he came back an hour later, the mirror was whole again. Untouched. Same frame. Same warped edges. Only now, it didn't reflect anything at all. It was just black. Like a window, waiting. Now he wrote journal entries. A record. Something someone might find if, when, he vanished. It was the only way to stay sane. October 14th, 1:44 a.m. The mirror tried to talk to me again. I didn't listen. I put in earplugs, but it whispered anyway, inside my head. It said my name. October 15th, 4:12 a.m. It copied my scream tonight. 3 seconds too late. Like it was learning the sound. Like it wanted to practice. October 16th, 12 a.m. He drove into town once. Made it all the way to Route 1 before the nosebleed started. Thick, sudden, no warning. Just a gush of red down his shirt and onto the steering wheel. Then, the static came in the radio, all stations going dead at once. And through the speakers, in a voice not quite his own, he heard, "Turn around." He did. He didn't even know why. Fear? Programming? Something deeper? Peter drove back home. The moment the trees surrounded him again, the bleeding stopped. The voice vanished. The radio returned to easy listening jazz. It was official. He was trapped. That night, something changed. He was brushing his teeth at the kitchen sink when the bulb above him began to dim. The lights in the rest of the house flickered one by one. A hum came from behind him. He didn't want to turn around, but he did. The bathroom door, still wedged shut with the chair, was open. The mirror light was on, and in the hallway, facing him, was himself. Only not quite. The man had his face, yes, his hair, his height, but his eyes were backward. Literally, whites where the irises should be, pupils pointing in like they were looking into the skull. Peter didn't move. Neither did the thing. Then, slowly, it raised one hand and tapped its chest 3 times. Then it smiled, wide and cracked, and vanished like fog being sucked into a vent. Peter stood in the kitchen for hours afterward, unmoving. Peter didn't sleep. Not that night. Maybe not the next one either. Sleep meant dreaming. Dreaming meant the mirror. And the mirror, God help him, was getting smarter, bolder. It had a message now. Let me in. Not let me out anymore. That had been the early stages, when it still needed Peter's cooperation. Now it wasn't begging, it was commanding. The reflection no longer waited for him to enter the bathroom. Now it came to him. He would catch his face out of the corner of his eye in the shine of the microwave door or the glass of a picture frame, and see it there. The thing with his face, his voice, his crooked smile, but not his eyes. Never the eyes. Those belonged to something older, something patient. It started knocking. 3 soft knocks from behind the bathroom mirror. Then silence. Then again. Always 3. Always at 3:07 a.m. It became part of the house's rhythm. The knocks, the creaks, the cold breath of air that slid under doors where no wind should be. Peter took to sleeping in the hallway, baseball bat in hand, chair wedged beneath the bathroom doorknob again, even though that had stopped working weeks ago. He hadn't seen his reflection in days, because the mirror didn't reflect him anymore. It reflected what it wanted him to see. Sometimes it showed him smiling. Sometimes it showed him screaming. Sometimes it just stood still while he walked away. One night, he heard his own voice call out from the bathroom. Not from memory, not from imagination. His voice, from inside the mirror. Peter, I'm cold in here. Let me in. It was identical. Not a close mimic. Not the way an actor might imitate him, but perfect. His voice with his weary breath, his slight stanner, his exact tone when scared. He didn't move, didn't answer. "Please, it's dark. I knew. I'm just a part of you." The voice waited. Then it began to cry. And the sound, it wasn't monstrous, not unnatural. It was human. That made it worse. Peter put his hands over his ears and whispered to himself, "This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't. Let me in!" The scream shattered the light bulb overhead. Glass exploded outward. Sparks hissed. Peter curled on the floor, arms over his head, blood dripping from a cut on his cheek. Silence returned. The mirror door remained closed. He tried to leave the next morning, packed a bag, grabbed his keys, got into the car. The engine didn't start. The battery was new, the fuel tank full. Still, nothing. Not a click, not a cough. Just the low, eerie silence of refusal. And in the rearview mirror, he saw himself. Only he wasn't in the car. The reflection was sitting in the passenger seat, smiling at him. October 18th. Journal entry. "I think it's wearing me. I caught my reflection brushing its teeth before I did. I watched it pick up the mug before I moved. I think it's reversing roles. I don't know how much longer I'll be the real one." He nailed the bathroom door shut, boarded it up, hammered wood across the frame until it looked like a boarded-up crime scene. He painted a red X over it in spray paint, burned sage in every corner of the house, whispered apologies to a god he hadn't believed in since his mother died. Then he looked into the mirror again. Not the big one, just a small hand mirror he found in the drawer while trying to throw things out. He told himself it was one last check, one last look, just to see if he was going crazy. He lifted it slowly, and there he was. His face, his sweat, his eyes, and then the reflection winked. It winked. Peter dropped the mirror and screamed. It no longer needed a mirror. That's when Peter knew it had gone too far, crossed some invisible threshold between worlds. Reflections were no longer a boundary. They were now windows, yes, but also doors, open ones. He started seeing it outside, not in glass, in shadows, in the flicker of the TV when it wasn't plugged in the screen of his dead phone, in the blank, black eyes of a crow that perched on his porch rail for 4 hours and didn't blink once. He had boarded up the bathroom like a man trying to stop a flood with tape and newspaper. But it didn't matter. He heard it walking around in there. Walking. Not pacing. Not stomping. Just casually moving. As if it lived there. Once he heard humming. His old high school fight song. Something only he would know. And that was the moment Peter Hale realized something bone deep and terrible. The thing in the mirror didn't just know him. It was him. Only reversed. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Like someone took everything inside Peter. The guilt, the bitterness, the ugly thoughts he never spoke aloud, and inverted them. Turned them into a consciousness. a soul of pure, festering mirror rot. It showed him things next. Visions. One night, every window in the house turned into a mirror. He stumbled from room to room, every pane of glass showing his face melting, contorting, rotting. His eyes falling out, his skin curling like burnt paper. In one, he saw himself hanging from a rope in the attic. In another, sitting in the bathtub with his wrists open and water dark red. They were possibilities, Peter realized. The thing was showing him all the ways he could die, and it wanted him to choose. Choose your end, Peter. Choose your exit. Choose which version of you gets to walk free. He tried to record it, set up his old camcorder in front of the bathroom door, pressed record, let it run all night. The next morning, the camera was gone. Only the tripod remained, and taped to it, scrawled in red Sharpie, was a note. You don't get to watch. You're being watched. He began losing time, waking up in strange positions, standing in the hallway with his hands pressed against the wall, forehead bruised from leaning against it. Once, he came to in the basement, naked, covered in soot, with the word reflect written across his chest in lipstick. His own lipstick. From that drawer in the bathroom he hadn't touched in years. And then one night, the mirror didn't show him anymore. It showed the bathroom, just the room. No Peter, no movement, just emptiness. Until, slowly, the mirror version of Peter walked into frame. He wore Peter's flannel, his jeans, his posture, and he looked tired. He stood in the mirror, staring directly at Peter, and said, "You don't belong here anymore. I do." Then he reached out, and the glass, like reality, was thinning. Peter screamed and threw a lamp at the mirror. It bounced off, and in the mirror, nothing changed. The other Peter kept walking forward. October 21st, journal entry. I think it's already out. I don't remember writing this, but the ink is fresh, and it's in my handwriting. Except, I don't use lowercase r's like that. The next night, he woke up and couldn't see his reflection in any mirror. None. Not the hallway, not the fridge handle, not the screen of his laptop. He ran to the bathroom door, still boarded up, and shouted, "What did you do?" And from the other side came a calm, steady voice. His voice. "I'm just being you, Peter. Better than you ever were." Then silence. Then breathing. Then, "Let me write the ending now." Peter didn't remember falling asleep, but he awoke on the bathroom floor. Naked, cold, wet. The boards he had nailed to the door were scattered like broken bones. The mirror was gone. Not shattered, gone, as if it had never existed. In its place was a smooth, white wall. No frame, no cracks, nothing. But he knew. He knew the mirror wasn't gone. It was inside him now. He crawled to his feet, trembling. Something was wrong with his legs. They moved like rubber, joints not quite locking where they should. He stumbled to the sink, carefully avoiding where the mirror had once been, and looked down. His fingernails were backwards, perfect, but reversed, as if the skin had been turned inside out and tucked back neatly. He rushed to the hallway, panting. His hands were shaking violently. He had to see. He had to know. The hallway mirror, the one he had draped with cloth weeks ago, still hung there, untouched. He yanked the towel away and screamed, because the man in the mirror wasn't him. Not entirely. He had Peter's eyes, yes, his nose, his scars, but the smile was all wrong. It started at the corners of the mouth and stretched too far, too deep. A predator's grin, slow and curious, like a wolf testing its prey. And then the reflection moved its hand before Peter did, waved at him. Peter raised his own hand, slowly, reluctantly, and the mirror image did not follow. Instead, it reached out, pressed its hand against the glass from the other side, and Peter felt warmth on his own palm, even though he wasn't touching the mirror at all. That's when he saw it. His skin, where his hand hovered in the air, began to shimmer, like heat rising from asphalt, like the world was warping. And then, right before his eyes, his own reflection stepped through the glass. The room tilted, not in a dreamlike way, in a wrong way, as if gravity had shifted and reality had hiccuped. The air changed. It smelled sweeter. And beside him now stood Peter Hale, the mirror version, but now made flesh. He was whole, solid, real, breathing. Peter stumbled backward. The other Peter didn't follow. He simply looked around the hallway with slow, appreciative nods, like someone returning to a childhood home. "You've let the place go," Mirror Peter said. "I'll fix that." Peter tried to speak, but his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. "Don't worry," the reflection said gently, adjusting his flannel. "You can rest now." Peter felt weak. The floor spun. His vision blurred like glass underwater. "I'm you, after all. You always wanted a second chance." The last thing Peter saw before he passed out was himself walking down the stairs, whistling. October 23, unknown entry. The words are neater now, calmer. The journal no longer contains fear, only observation. Peter Hale is stable. He sleeps well. He doesn't scream anymore. I've taken over the writing. The voice fits better now. The hands are stronger. The ideas sharper. I've cleaned the mirrors. Everything is so much clearer. Peter Hale woke up underground. Not literally, but it felt that way. The ceiling above him was familiar. the popcorn finish, the old water stain that looked vaguely like Florida. But it was dimmer somehow, washed out, the colors wrong, as if the world had been inverted, contrast reversed and flipped like an old film negative. And it was silent. No birds, no wind, no hum of appliances, just the sound of Peter's breathing. And even that seemed faint. He sat up. His body didn't feel quite right. Limbs moved like they were borrowed. His skin had no temperature, neither cold nor warm. And when he ran his hands down his arms, he realized he wasn't touching anything. His fingers passed through himself. He rushed to the mirror. Any mirror. There were plenty now. Too many. The house, once modest and dim, had changed. Every room now held a reflective surface. Tall standing mirrors, long rectangular sheets bolted into the walls, floors polished to a black glass sheen. Every window now shimmered like silver. Peter ran, barefoot and gasping, from one room to the next. And in every single mirror, he saw his body, standing, moving, laughing, but he was no longer inside it. The man in the mirror had taken his place. He walked through Peter's home with a new swagger, his back straighter, his eyes sharper, his smile more genuine than Peter's had ever been. He cooked breakfast, brushed his teeth, typed on Peter's laptop like he had always belonged. And when the phone rang, he answered in Peter's voice. "Hey, Linda. Yeah, I've been writing again. It's good to be back." Linda, his agent, she believed him. She believed the thing. Peter tried to scream, to pound the glass, to reach through. Nothing. No sound. No touch. No reply. He was no longer a man. He was a shadow, a reverse, a ghost trapped in glass. And the man in the mirror, his smile now permanent, was outside. Time passed. Days, weeks, maybe months. Time didn't exist the same way in here. There were no clocks, no change in light, no sleep. Just watching. Watching as the mirror version of Peter Hale lived his life. He wrote the novel, not the one Peter had abandoned. A new one. The Man in the Bathroom Mirror. A horror story about a writer who sees a reflection that doesn't move with him. The literary world praised it as a return to form. Critics called it Peter Hale's darkest and most personal work yet. It became a bestseller. They loved it. And Peter, the real one, the one inside, could only watch. Sometimes, late at night, the mirror version would stare into a mirror again, into Peter, and whisper things. "You never appreciated it, Peter. You wasted what you had. I'm just doing it better." And then, the worst thing of all, you were always the reflection. I'm the real one now. Peter began to forget. Not everything, just the details. The feel of hot coffee. The way cold air stings your lungs. the smell of books, the weight of pen on paper, a hug, a kiss, a conversation. He forgot his mother's voice. He forgot the date of her death. He forgot who he was. And eventually, the glass no longer showed a shadow at all. Just a man, smiling back. Epilogue. The final reflection. If you visit Peter Hale's home now, it looks normal. Clean, well kept. The lawn is always mowed. The curtains always drawn. But if you look too long into any of the windows, especially at night, you might see something. A flicker, a figure, a face that looks almost like Peter Hale, but not quite. And if you look closer still, if you dare, you might notice the eyes are backward, looking not out at the world, but into the glass, waiting, because behind every mirror, there's someone watching. And sometimes they want out.